The two verses at hand today will give us very deep insights into what is life and what is worth valuing in life. Vedanta, Gita, Sri Krishna, they are cutting the clutter. They are making the seemingly most complicated questions appear like a child's naive queries. Long drawn questions are being met with extremely simple answers. Simple, yet powerful, complete, deep, sufficient, not simplistic. Not reductionist. So we'll meet two today. And these two are worthy of our regards. Only these two. And Arjun is being told, if there is any third one that you are paying attention to, attaching value to, you are mistaken. And that mistake is at the root of your grief. Which are these two? The first one comes to us in verse 25. And the second one in the subsequent verse, 26. Look at the very construction of the shlok. This, the self, Atma, is unmanifested, unthinkable, and unchangeable. Therefore, knowing this to be such, thou ought not mourn. There is no need to mourn. Now, how is not mourning, not grieving related to the Atma? The logic has to be very clear. The self is who you are, really. But that only somebody like Krishna knows, right? Left to us, we would say we are what we think of ourselves, right? And none of us think of ourselves as Atma. To begin with, Atma is eternal. It never took birth. It doesn't celebrate birthdays. Correct? It is in fact beyond eternal. Eternity is a small thing for it. So we say it's beyond time, timeless. We don't identify ourselves with the Atma. We live as the little self. The little self. That little self is called the ego. Right? So even though we actually are the Atma, yet the Atma to us can at best be a distant target. It's a very strange thing. that which you really are has to be a distant target to you. It's a sad remark on the ignorant state we have chosen for ourselves. Otherwise, the run of the logic would have said, if you are the Atma, you are the Atma. How can it be distant? That which you are, how can it be a distant thing? But we have needlessly, erroneously, ignorantly, and rather imaginatively managed to situate ourselves a long distance from who we really are and where we really are. This imaginary situation is called the ego. Like a drunkard believing at this moment, a drunkard here in our city, believing that he is somewhere in Paris or enjoying bouncing himself on the moon. You could be somewhere, but that's no guarantee that you know where you are. You could be somebody, but that's no guarantee that you know who you are. Right? So being or having is not sufficient. What really matters is knowing. And if you don't know, then it doesn't matter what you have. You'll be oblivious to it. You have a bank account. It has 1 trillion rupees in it. You don't know about it. How rich are you? How rich are you? Might be penniless. That's our state. Having that bank account is not sufficient. Knowing that there exists such an account and in your very name, that's what is needed. And that's the purpose of all self-inquiry, self-knowledge, reflection, everything. Not to render you richer, not to open you a new account, but to disclose to you that your penury is just imaginative. Are you getting it? It does not give you anything. The whole field of self-knowledge just cannot give you anything. It is meant to take away your solid belief that you have something. And what do you think you have? That's poverty. That poverty we frequently refer to by the name of incompleteness, apurnata. That's the imaginary thing that the ego thinks it has. What does the ego claim to have? Poverty. Now, poverty in the factual sense means an absence of something. But poverty in the inner sense means having an additional thing called the idea of poverty. If you are factually poor, then you lack in something, right? What do you lack in? Money. If you are really poor, you lack in money. Maybe you don't even have 500 or 1000 bucks. You lack in something. You look around for it, you won't find it. You lack in something. But in the inner sense, when you are poor, you actually have something in surplus. You have something additional. You have something needless, yet present. And that needless presence is called the idea of poverty. So poverty is not a lack. It is an additionality, a surplus. Remove the idea of poverty and there is no poverty. In the inner sense, not in the material sense. Right? Now this idea makes you believe that you are dependent on the objects you perceive in the field of your experience. Is not a poor man dependent? The moment you endorse this idea of poverty, you subject yourself to dependency. Correct? So I am dependent on this and that because I am poor. The poor person just cannot be self-sufficient. So that's the situation of the ego. The ego is always dependent on this and that because the ego has something additional. Delicious irony. Because it has something extra, therefore it is dependent on everybody. Yeah. And what is the ego dependent on? Objects in the field of sensual perception. The first identification the ego has is with the body. The second identification is with things that are in the sensual field of the body. Simple. And whatsoever is in the sensual field of the body rises and falls. That's the law of Prakriti. Rises and falls, comes and goes. The very law is appearance, mutation, disappearance. And the ego has tied itself with such objects that come, mutate, change, and vanish. Right? The very life of the ego then depends on these objects. And these objects are always ready to depart. So ephemeral, they can vanish any moment. Therefore, the ego is always afraid and actually always grieving, because every second there is something vanishing from the field of its associations. Every second. Either vanishing or mutating. Mutation too is a kind of disappearance, is it not? This is at the core of all sorrow. I identify with something and that thing is slipping away. Something I see as my very life, and that thing is have you seen how vapors just fade into the air? If I just pull the lid, you might see it here as well. There is the thing, there are the vapors. Seen the wisps disappear? That's the sorrow of life. Whatsoever you love is constantly disappearing in front of your eyes. And that is also the grief of Arjun. Now look at the look at the genius with which Sri Krishna addresses it. Read the verse in negativa. But before that, please understand. The ego exists to come to a completion. The ego exists to become what it anyway actually is. But in the process of becoming, it will always miss the target because it is starting from a wrong place. Are you getting it? The ego wants to become the true self. The true self, the ego actually always is. And the ego wants to become the true self by associating itself with objects of its own perception. In other words, the ego associates itself with more of itself to become that which it has run away from. I exist because I ran away from the truth, right? Now I suffer. Something keeps biting within. So what do I do? What do I do? I associate myself with more of myself to become that which I ran away from. Will that ever happen? Will that ever happen? The ego decided to somehow avoid the truth. It ran away. Must be having some nice, smart logic of its own. It ran away, but then it started missing the truth. Hurts. So what does the ego do? It looks at its own sensual field, and there what does it find? Objects, objects, objects. And in those objects, it tries to search for completion through association. Are you getting it? Now, will such a completion ever arrive? No. The self is the ego's love. Atma is the ego's love. Atma is also the ego's terror. The Atma is ego's ultimate target. The Atma is also what the ego wants to desperately avoid. Getting it? And the ego keeps suffering. And then somebody like Krishna comes across and he has a few words of advice. He says, if the self is your target, then you should not be valuing anything other than your target. Sounds fair? Does it? If the self is your target, then you should not be grieving for anything other than your target. And you are grieving. What if I prove to you that the stuff you are grieving for does not belong to the plane of or vicinity of your target? What if I prove that? Would you still continue to grieve? That's the route Sri Krishna is taking here. Are you getting it? The ego is always found grieving, full of sorrow, complaints, misery, gruffy. You go to it and it's always in a bad mood. It never gets what it wants to, so always egged. Sri Krishna is saying, if one has to feel bad, then that should be for the thing that you really want. And your professed target is the Atma. Now let us examine what you are grieving for. And I'll display to you that what you are grieving for is nowhere close to the field of Atma. Therefore, your grief is useless, Arjun. How does he take the route? He says, the self is unmanifested, unthinkable, and unchangeable. We said read it in the negativa. The self is unmanifested, unthinkable, unchangeable. Which means that everything which is manifested, thinkable, and changeable is not the self. And the self is what you love. Therefore, everything that is manifested, changeable, and thinkable cannot be loved. Everything that is manifested, thinkable, and changeable is not worthy of your love. If it is not worthy of your love, how is it worthy of your grief? So stop grieving, Arjun. If you have to grieve, you will grieve only for what you really love. What do you really love? You love that which cannot be thought of, unthinkable, unimaginable, unmanifested. Uncreated and unending. That's what you love, right? And if you love that, why are you crying over small things? The logic is immaculate, is it not? Can you find fault with it? No way. Now, Arjun, examine the things that you are attached to, associated to. How many of those objects are beyond thought, beyond manifestation, beyond change? And if they are not, what wisdom lies in valuing them so much? In your sensual field, you will always come across objects. And objects compel, objects charm. Objects just take you in, don't they? Magnificent objects. Wow. And when an object is getting big on you, how do you just test basic caution? How do you exercise it? The answer is here. Just ask the object, will you change? Were you born? Are you within the field of thought? If the answer is yes, then the stuff is not to be really valued. Really valued. Now, valuation in Vedanta is of three kinds. This comes from Adi Shankaracharya. There is paramarthik valuation, that which is absolutely valuable. The love of your heart. Then there is stuff that is just practically valuable because you exist as an embodied human being. so you find that chair valuable. Gives you decent lower body support. That's the value. So to the extent I am the body, the chair is valuable. So that's vyavaharik mulya. Practical value. Not paramarthik, just vyavaharik. Paramarthik means absolute. And then there is imaginary value, where there is no value of any kind, but you are tricked into seeing value. That's called pratibhasik. No value of any kind. But the advertisement was so sleek, you just rushed into buying the stuff. Does it not happen? That's pratibhasik. There is nothing really there, but you are bewitched and you rushed into the deal. Are you getting it? Shri Krishna is telling Arjun, there is no paramarthik worth in the ones you are weeping for. Stupid ones remain at the pratibhasik level. The ordinary man remains at the vyavaharik level. But Arjun, you can do better. Rise to the paramarthik level, absolute level. If you have to weep, weep only for the one. It's not as if weeping or grief or tears are looked down upon or are prohibited. Vedanta is not an instruction manual. It is not a set of commandments. The moment you are found weeping, you would be asked, who is weeping and what for? That's the only thing. What have you become as a weeper? And what in your tears is the object of desire? What for are you weeping? So weep for the paramarthik one, and that's okay. That's okay. There can be tremendous difference between tears and tears. One weeps for the one, and one weeps in his inebriated state for all nonsense. These two are poles apart, no? Even though their tears might appear alike. Arjun, what are you weeping for? Here's the touchstone. The ones that you are weeping for, are they unmanifested? Are they unchanging? Are they undying? If yes, then weep. Maybe I'll join you. But if you are weeping for ordinary stuff, then stop. There's no point. What do we get out of it? Only the one is worthy of your regards. If you have to weep, weep for that. And what is that one? That one is what you must find yourself to be. So I like to say that one is your highest potentiality. That one is also your reality because that's who you really are. That one is your destiny, in the sense that you would never be at peace without seeing yourself as that. What do I feel sorry for? Feel sorry for not living up to who you really are. Feel sorry for betraying your own cause. Do not weep at what others said or did to you. Weep over your own timid and tepid and spineless reactions. These are two very different things. When you are weeping over your own needless incapacity, then you are remembering what you ought to be, and that is okay. Now weep. But when you are weeping with respect to something of this world, then you are just weeping for objects in the field of Prakriti. These tears will not help you. If ever you have to address yourself, why am I not yet what I ought to be? Not in the worldly sense, but in the internal sense. Getting it? Something comes and becomes too big on you. Just ask yourself, is it something of thought? Is it something that can be mentated, conceptualized? Was this thing eternally in existence? Did it take shape? Is it changing form? Ask these questions. And if the answer is yes, then be free. Relieve yourself of the obligation to weep. No object deserves your tears. Only the one does. And that one is your own real nature, potential, truth. Getting it? So, who's to be worshipped? The one. And then in Vedanta comes another one who deserves your respect and regards. The one is Nirakar Brahm. And now, in the next verse, we are introduced to the second one who's worthy of your adulation. And that's Sagun Prakriti. Sagun Prakriti. Only these two deserve your respect. The highest respect goes to Nirgun Brahma. And then comes Sagun Prakriti. But who's not to be worshipped at all? The individual ego. The individual ego. Verse 26 says, but if you cannot understand what birthlessness and deathlessness mean, because that really taxes the brain. The brain cannot conceptualize something which is not a concept in the first place. Everything in your sensual field is a concept, and therefore it can be conceptualized. It is definite, therefore it can be defined. But the infinite. How do you define it? And all concepts are definitions, right? So it's too heavy. To make it easier, Sri Krishna says, but if you want to think of the highest as the one who takes constant births and constant deaths, even in that case, you need not mourn for these people. Oh, it's beautifully said. Everything is contained in this. So only two are worthy of your respect. The first one, the highest one, is the one who was never born at all. And if you have the caliber, move directly into that. Say anything that was ever born will always be a distant second priority for me. My first priority, my first love is that which was never born. But if this sounds too difficult, then you can respect and prioritize Prakriti herself. Prakriti as a totality, not the individual objects in Prakriti. And in Prakriti as a totality, there is constant birth and constant death. The analogy is of the ocean. It is always waving. At any moment, there are an infinite number forming and an infinite number dissolving. Therefore, what to grieve over? Death? I mean, this particular death, there are a million deaths happening right now. What to celebrate? This birth? Oh, there are a million births happening right now. Not just in my own species, but all over the place, across the board. Are you getting? The curse of life is individualization. Something special is happening to me. No, in Prakriti, what is happening at a macro level, at a total level. It is nirvayaktik. It is not individual. It is a general thing. It is a universal thing. When it comes to Atma, there the stuff is not even universal. Because in the truth, no universe exists. And therefore, that option is too difficult for this little thing to grasp. How to worship that which is not even universal? So, Sri Krishna realizes that difficulty and says, fine. At least graduate from the individual, rise to the universal. If you cannot come to that which is beyond mental, at least come to that which is universal. Do not remain limited to that which is individual. So you get 3 levels now. The top level is, write down, Satya, truth, then the middle one is Prakriti, universe, and the lowest level is of the individual. Here you will write my world. Not the universe, but my world. The middle level was the universe. Not personal, not individual. And the lowest level is my world. Sri Krishna is trying to pull Arjun up from the bottommost level, the third level. And we constantly see that when he teaches, he first of all teaches the highest. And when the disciple proves himself incapable of imbibing the highest, only then the second highest is presented. So in verse 25, the highest was presented. If you have to weep, weep for the absolute. In verse 26, it is being said, if you have to weep, don't weep only for your relatives. Weep for the entire world. So many people are dying. So many species are suffering. Why do you weep only for your own relatives? Weep for everybody. Even this is going to relieve you from sorrow. But the one who would forever be mired in sorrow is the one who would weep only for his own personal individual world. No relief, no redemption for such a person. So topmost was Satya, then Prakriti, and the third one is Ahankar. Personal world. Satya, Prakriti, and then the bottommost is Ahankar. These you could also call as the three levels of truths. There can be no three truths. Only the top one is truth. But for the ego, even these two are some kinds of truths. So in that sense, the top one is Paramarthik. The middle one is Vyavharik. The lowest one is Pratibhasik. Sri Krishna is saying, come on, get up. If you cannot go to the Paramarthik one, at least go to the universal level. Right now you are weeping only for your relatives. If you have to weep, weep for a general cause. Weep for a universal reason. And the best thing could be if you weep just for being the one who weeps. If you weep at the stupidity of having become the weeping ego. I weep because I see how stupid it is to weep. I weep at being so stupid that I am weeping. Clear? What is to be valued in this world? The absolute. And if that is too much for you, then value the Prakriti itself. But the most unfortunate ones are those who value their personal world. My body, my baby, my toys, my house, my thoughts, my dreams, my future. These are the really cursed ones. They have cursed themselves. The smaller your circle of identification, the deeper your sorrow. Oh, all I have is 5 people in my life, I live and die for them. Your sorrow will be very deep, because you will clutch these people to death. If you have only 5 people to live and die for, who can save those 5 people? you will kill them. You will suffocate them. And they will have their revenge. Your life will be a gloomy tale. If you have to work either for liberation, which is the highest thing, or work for universal emancipation, which is the second best thing. If you have to work either for liberation, nothing better than that. But if that is too much for you, then work for a universal cause. But those who work only for their own personal spheres, they are the ones who remain forever in sorrow. And that, to some extent, is the situation of Arjun here. He's saying, oh, my relatives, my memories, my past, my thoughts, my beliefs, my brothers, my fame. Are you getting it? Atma, never born. Never born. And never born, never gone. That's Atma. Prakriti, always born, always gone. Again, no fear. Atma never born. So fear does not even begin. Fear is only for the one who begins. Atma does not even begin ever. So no fear. Atma never born. Prakriti, constantly born and constantly gone. Ahankar, once born, once gone, hence deep fear. Atma ajanma. Atma ajanma. Top level. Prakriti punarjanma. Aham, once born. Ek janam. The truth is that there is no birth at all. But if that truth is too much to swallow, then you should know that there are infinite rebirths. But those infinite rebirths are not of the individual ego. They are of Prakriti herself, like the ocean waving, as we said. And when it comes to the individual ego, once born, once gone, and infinite suffering. Getting it? So all the fear is concentrated at the lowest level. If you are always born and always gone, again there is no need to be afraid, right? Atma means I don't have to go anywhere at all. So I can't miss the flight. There is no fear. I can't miss the flight because I have nowhere to go. I am the sky itself. What flight do I need to take? Ever heard? The sky is boarding the flight. Heard that? No. Atma means I am the sky itself. Therefore, I cannot miss the flight. I have no flight to take. Prakriti means, yes, I do have a flight to take, but there are flights every 5 minutes. So again, I am not afraid. If I miss this one, then the next one is on its way. No issues. Aham, just one flight is there. Very afraid. The reality is that you don't have to catch any flight. The reality is that there can be no death. But if you do acknowledge that you are the body, and there are births and deaths happening, then please also see that all bodies are similar to your bodies. If there are deaths happening, then there are also births happening. So, what loss can death make? What harm can it incur? You miss this flight, the next one has arrived. And this flight is much the same as, but that you can acknowledge only when you are free of the individual ego. Otherwise, you will say that flight was special. No, yes, I understand. This one died, that one got born. But this one was special because it was mine. When you acknowledge that the individual ego doesn't mean anything, but fundamentally we are all just stuff of the earth, different shapes, different forms, colors and such things. Fundamentally there is no difference. If one has gone, the other has arrived. No difference. Then again you are relieved of grief. Are you not? Grief is for the one who thinks that he is special, unique. Oh, I missed that flight and only that flight was mine. Oh, this body is going to die and only this body is mine. So if this body falls, then I will disappear. And such a person will be very afraid. Therefore, the whole practice was those who went for the highest would worship Nirguna Brahma. And those who said we want to be a little more practical, vyavharik, they said we will worship Prakriti. But nobody was to worship the individual self, the ego. Even those who would worship the Absolute, the Nirguna Brahma, they would still give high regards to Prakriti because Prakriti was to be the medium. Prakriti was to be the medium. From this arose Nirguna Upasana and Saguna Upasana. And these were not at odds with each other. They complemented each other. The Saguna Upasak would say, I will graduate to the Nirguna. The Nirguna Upasak would say, oh, without Saguna, how do I worship the Nirguna? Are you getting it? So there were those who went for Shiva, the Absolute. Nirguna. And then there were those who would worship Shakti. In these two verses of the Gita, you could see the origin of the Shaiv and Shakt paths and how the two complement each other. Getting it?